So.
It's wait till the end of the day, wait till these guys are ready. Yeah, wait till run your board to board. Down there.
You got a mic in your live, man.
Working now? It was asking to put it off. It doesn't show.
You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 FM and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida. We are on location today. We're doing something a little different. As y'all know, we're at Warm Mineral Springs, and I'm going to bring over a really special guest, and she's going to be on camera by herself today. Woohoo! So introduce yourself and tell them where we're at and what this is all about today.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Trish Sturgis, and I am the Assistant Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Northport. We are at one of my lovely parks. We got this back just after Ian with some substantial damage to the area, buildings, and we were challenged last year with opening it up and getting our people back in the park. And we have been successful at doing that and recreating these numbers every day ever since last April. That, along with our Northport Aquatic Center, is run by the division within the Parks and Recreation Department called the Aquatics Division. And it is led by some great people and great lifeguards that keep you safe in, on, and around the water when you're here in Northport. So please come on out. Each one of these has a daily fee, and you're welcome to find those fees at northportfl.gov. /pool, that'll give you the one for the Aquatic Center, and /Warm Mineral Springs will give you what you need for here. We do have daily discounted rates for residents, so you know what, if you have nothing to do this summer, come on out to Warm Mineral Springs or the Northport Aquatic Center and enjoy the water.
And the beautiful thing is that the water temperature is what, year round?
This water temperature here at the springs is moderately around 85 degrees all year round. It has a hot and a cool water system that comes in, so it stays nice and moderate all year. Warmer than that water at the Aquatic Center.
Awesome. So we've got Mayor White going to step over now, and we're going to take a little tour too through the buildings. And Mayor White, how are you today?
Okay, I just hope this is not a 3-hour tour.
It is. Well, you know, it's
Because I'm not going to be able to stay in the sun for 3 hours.
Gilligan's Island Adventures by WKDW Radio
Right.
97.5. So just to highlight a couple things, I'm doing this on my cell phone for you that are listening on the radio and those of you who are on social media. So if you have questions or comments, please post them. If you don't like what you hear, or you do like what you hear, that's fine. Because the reality is we're just going to have some bold-faced truth about everything that's going on here, and whether you like it or you don't like it, that's totally up to you on how you take the information. But so I'm going to start with a quick question. As a commissioner, it's one of four votes, or one of five total.
1 of 5.
One of five, and where do we stand right now with the buildings as they are, and restoring them? And can we give a highlight over that?
Yes, I guess, and no, because the cost to restore them, as you know, came in at 18 million, which was twice what we had budgeted for that. And that was a couple of years ago.
And that was pre-storm too, right?
That was pre-storm.
So we could pretty much associate with double cost now.
Right, because there was 14 inches of water in those buildings.
Right. So
So
we're looking at more like
much more depth.
35 or more million to
Right.
get these done.
So the commission did vote to get a price for demolition of the buildings, but that is not a done deal. That still has to be voted on when that comes back, once we have that information. However, we do have a meeting on May 28th that we're going to be hearing from the Sarasota Alliance about maybe another a pathway or a possibility to restore the buildings. But again, we're talking about money. That's always the,
Go
what's the
ahead.
matter?
No, go ahead. We're gonna walk.
Oh, okay,
We're gonna walk. We're gonna take a walk.
okay.
So go ahead and continue.
Well, that's always the thing is that people have great ideas, but we need to have the bags of money. That's really what it comes down to. And that's coupled by the fact that the city of Northport has never been able to borrow money without going to the voters.
Right?
And we're the only municipality in the entire state of Florida who can't even borrow a dollar without it going to the ballot box. So if that was in place, we certainly could have been using the revenue that is created every year from this to pay off a bond, but that didn't happen. Don't know why, but that is something that could be a future funding source. But we would have to have the voters approve that in November. In the meantime, yes, you're getting a good.
We're getting a pretty decent view. We're not allowed inside the buildings, but
What
I've
is
got
this?
my handy dandy.
This is the admissions building. We talked
Oh.
about spa area. And
Okay.
Admissions building, and that was back in the day. That was where people came for the first time, right?
That's right. That would be your main entry through from the parking lot.
Right. So we've got lots of roof damage, and really that's typical of these style builds because they back in the 50s when it was built.
And that's what you have to be looking at too. There were window air conditioner. I was mentioning before that I actually was here in the restaurant when the restaurant was operating, when it was county city owned.
Right.
I would come in on a Saturday and play guitar and sing. And it was so hot in there because they had those those window units going full blast, but cooking and it was just not a good thing. So there's another window unit
Yeah.
there, but this is what we've been dealing with and what this has looked like. Even before Ian, you had a lot of compromise to the integrity of the buildings and also what it should have been.
Right. So this is the main entrance, or was the main entrance, and you can see it's got it's got some real needs as far as that goes. But when you're talking about restoration, we also have a real heavy case of black mold within all
Right.
these buildings at this point. So we're talking about some really heavy duty
Yes.
restoration. That number, that 17.5, I just kind of want to, I like the plan of 2019, but the number doesn't equate to that plan that was originally done
Right.
in the day,
And when
even though they didn't fund it back then either.
They didn't fund it back then. It was, and the thing is that the city took it over in 2014, so there was 5 years before that plan even came out. And then, yes, there was no commitment to finance anything in that plan. So it's still, this place just still languished even after 2019 with no real plan.
So I kind of want to approach this with a equal opportunity. Private had this before the city had.
Yes, and that was Sam Herron,
Yes.
and I knew him, and I
But the maintenance, I'm going to stick
Yes,
with that for a second
yes.
because we'll go into that, because I think when you look at the transition of the property from person to organization,
right,
we didn't buy these buildings in pristine condition either.
no.
So there was a lot going on prior to.
In fact, it was bank owned because it passed to another private owner after Mr. Herron, and then it went into, what do you call it? Not bankruptcy, but they defaulted on the loan.
Foreclosure.
So there was nothing being done because it was bank owned. So that we in the county bought it and it was just in terrible condition.
No.
Is it because we're in here?
No. So I'm back up. Sorry. I had a bleep in the show. Sorry about that. And I don't mean bleep in a bad way, I guess.
Okay.
But only you can take. Only, I got it up and running again. So I came
Okay.
outside the building again to make sure it was okay. The question I have is that with everything that we're looking at what point is it tax dollars that's going to be spent on this? I know that we're looking at different ways of funding it, but are we really looking at just the taxpayers' dollars paying for it? And do you think there's a majority of the community that, and I mean that
Mhm.
in the most honest kind of way. Do you think there's a majority of the people that want to put endless amounts of money into Warm Mill Springs like that?
I don't, I, just from talking to people, they don't because mainly they've never been here. They don't come here. So you're less likely to invest in something or say, I'll pay for that if you don't use it. We got the same flack with the aquatic center.
Correct. If you use it, then you're in love with
And
it.
it's great. If you don't, it's cost the city money. However, this so far, the only monies that's been allotted for this is from surtax. So that's not ad valorem taxes. And when I looked up what this, what kind of revenue this generates, again, the figures that I had, I think it was over the course of 6 or 7 years, there was $2 million in the Warm Mineral Springs Fund, and that took that long to generate just that. So when we're talking about a plan that initially was 9.5 million to
Yeah.
restore, that came in with only one bid, that was it. That was the only taker at twice as much, 18 million to restore these buildings. Um, Again, you would have to be looking at the taxpayers paying that extra money to get this going.
So and trying to stay with the theme of keeping the buildings, do we have any idea what we would be asking of the taxpayer as far as the burden goes? Is it a higher millage rate, something like that, or a bond? Is that an option out there right now?
Right, well, bond, funny you should mention that, is that the city of Northport cannot borrow any money without it going to the taxpayers, and that's even for $1. We have no authority to borrow money
Which we are the only city that has
in the
that.
entire state.
Yeah.
In the entire
Nothing like
state.
handcuffing yourself.
So when people say that this produces revenue, all those years, yes, if the city had that ability to bond, are we okay?
Yep, you're fine.
Okay, that, yes, you could have been using that revenue every year to pay off that bond, because you have to show when you take out a bond, how you paying it back. And that could have happened, but we don't have that authority. And if that were to happen, it would have to go to the voters to approve that, then yes, then you could take out a bond, get all of this fixed, and use the revenue that's being produced to pay back that bond.
Right.
To me, that's an easy fix.
There's an easy there, but you have to have the plug and play available to you, and we don't have that.
That's right. That would have to go to the voters to approve it, just like the voters had to approve the bond for Price Boulevard. Anything that the city wants to take out a bond for has to be approved by the
So
voters.
you brought the magical words, Price Boulevard, into the mix. That is already done.
That's done and that's happening.
Right,
People
so-
aren't seeing anything because we had to go out and redesign some of those bridges to
Correct,
harden
and
them
we've talked
after
about that
Ian.
in depth.
And we talked about that, but they're gonna see groundbreaking. We already broke the ground officially, but they're gonna see construction by the end of this year.
But we could do the same thing if we
Here.
did something like
Yes.
that here. But that would be, that would have to be through the referendum.
Yes,
All right.
Right.
And are we shooting for that referendum in November?
for November,
Yeah. So we've got a lot of work to do to educate the public.
for what it entails. That's
So
right.
what is, other than the overview that you just gave, what are the other options that are out there? Because I've heard, oh my gosh, there's unlimited grants. There's all kinds of things you can do. There's state designation.
Right.
But is that a consequence is there a consequence for every one of those?
There is, and I've researched this from going back to when Cypress Gardens was privately owned, and that went into public. That's where Legoland is today. That whole thing, how that took place. Babcock Ranch, when that was, they used Florida Forever funds to pay for that, but that's only half of that. That was a whole big convoluted deal to get that off the ground. And even Weeki Wachee, when Weeki Wachee went to a state park, what they had to do in order for that to produce enough revenue to take care of the springs, because that's why the town of Wikiwachi, population 12. Yes, they had 12 people on that sign all the time. They needed to produce revenue, and that's why they had to give it up, because they weren't even taking enough money in for that. Are we good?
Yeah, we're great.
Okay.
And she definitely is going to ask me that question because I am using my phone today. And if you have questions, I am trying desperately to get everything posted, but we are mobile. We're using my phone, not a tablet. So I'm squinting a lot. But if you have questions or thoughts or concerns, please post them. We are going to follow back around. And, you know, if you want to see higher taxes and you want to pay for it, then that's fine. But you also need to keep in mind that the city, we have grant writers, 5 now, right?
We
Or
have,
more?
we have a good number, yes.
Yeah.
And I wanted to address what you said about there's boatloads of money out there for
Yeah,
historic
tons. That's
preservation.
why they're here.
And I've researched that, and I have had people send me some of the grants that they have gotten, like in the city of Sarasota, the city of Venice. And most of them are matching grants that you have to put up enough money, whatever they're giving you. And also, if it says that they were awarded $4 million, they don't get that $4 million in one shot. When I looked at the spreadsheet from the state, they give out like $500,000 a year.
But there's also matching funds, though.
But that's,
a lot of
that's,
them.
that's how that's matched. They'll
Yeah.
give you that $500,000, but you have to have another $500,000. And I told people, if we're already short 9 million, that's really is not realistic to think a grant like that is going to work to fix this.
This,
That's after this is fixed.
If you had one specific project that you had 9 years to repair, this isn't one of those.
That's right.
And the reason is that if we don't do something soon, Mother Nature already kind of struck her,
Right.
force on this whole area.
Yes.
And I want to hit the part that the citizens have to deal with too. And a lot of it is favorite wording. And people's favorite wording is insurance right now, because they realized that they had to have insurance when Ian came through, but they also had to have insurance to get their houses repaired.
Right.
And then the insurance company, in their lovely wisdom, decides to increase their rate.
Right.
Well, even if we fix these buildings, are they insurable if we, at their best potential?
That's a good question. Because
Do
we
we
were
know the answer to that?
talking.
Or is that something we can answer now?
So we can say that at this point in time, we are in an AE flood zone.
Yeah, this is a
And we would have a very difficult time and a very costly time insuring at this level. So that's what I can 100% say. At this
Right.
level where these buildings sit right now,
So
would be
we
tough.
kind of have a magnified problem, because even if we put them back, we're in a flood zone. And then the odds of it flooding again are high, of course, because we just went through it. So proof is in the pudding. And I don't know if the Chuck Englishes are out there that can answer this question, but back in the 90s, he talks about the flood that we had back in the 90s. Did this area flood back then?
Yes.
Yeah, so so there's some legitimacy there.
Right. And
Jill,
I had a question with that. When some of the historical preservation places we're talking about, you can raise the floor, but the building would still be sitting in that zone, correct? So that would still apply, that you'd have to get insurance based on the fact that it's still in an AE zone and you haven't raised the actual physical elevation to prevent that.
yeah, so we need to, not only do we need to restore the buildings, but we got to raise them first. So that's another cost that we didn't figure, 2019 plan, and Jill's listening in, so I
No,
think
it was
probably
just straight.
just straight
where
up
they're
rehab.
Sitting now to get them
So
back.
Ian kind of, Ian's changed Price Boulevard forever
Yes,
because of
the bridges.
Yeah, the bridges. So, and that had to go back in, and that's
Right.
the delay there. But when you're talking about this, now we're talking about, another delay, but we truly have a plan that if you took it into a bank and said, here's my plan, they're not funding it because there's no financial
Right,
plan for it,
yes,
truthfully.
right.
Now, if we were to save these buildings and put our money into it, first, we just found out that, and everybody listening just found out, the insurance is not available. Or if it is, it's going to be extremely costly. Even if you were to raise it, these are not going to be new buildings, and they're not going to hit all
Right.
the codes that we need to hit to get all the discounts. So it's still going to be that citizen style, lump sum total.
Right,
that's out there. So that's just something else for citizens
yes.
on both sides of this conversation to think about.
And you bring up a good point there, that is that fiscally responsible to do that, to invest, even if we were to come up with 18, or now we know it's going to be way more than that, to fix these buildings. They're in a flood zone. We can't get insurance, and they get damaged again. Oh, well, there goes your $18 million investment. Now we're starting over. Is that something as a homeowner you would do? No, you shore up your house, fix that roof, do what you need to do, so the next time it isn't as severe.
So I'm going to throw the conversation in because Jill posted it. So we self-insure, and for people who need to understand that phrasing for the city of Northport, what does that mean? That self-insured?
I can't explain
Do
it.
we know the true definition of that, or
All I know is that
self-insured side of it?
we carry the most of the liability.
Yeah,
And there has to be so much money put aside
yeah.
to cover losses.
So it's not your traditional.
It's really a gamble.
Yeah.
I was going to school to be a commercial lines underwriter, and it's like you're gambling that your losses are not going to be more than what you've put aside.
So the homeowner that lives in a flood zone that says, I'm not going to worry about it, and the government will take care of me. Well, they do, but they don't take care of you in a 100% fashion.
Right.
It's a slice here because you gambled.
That's right.
And so that's sort of like the self-insured.
Mhm.
And Jill, if you have a better definition, post it online real
Yeah.
quick, and I'll
Right.
try to flash it up there. But let's walk on down to the next building, because we also have the cyclorama. And I know the beautiful thing is we just had a beautiful shaded spot. So we've got a second building. What was this building about?
This building here?
Yep. Wasn't this the showers, restrooms, and restaurant? Yeah, so we're not allowed in this building. Condemned is the word, right?
Yes.
All right, so they have been
Did you
condemned.
put that in there just to see
Yeah, I
why
can,
it's condemned?
but I'm gonna, here's the roof that's up there, the exposure that we're dealing with. So this roof technically would have to be completely taken off and restructured.
Oh, yeah.
And the architect would then have to go in to make it. So you can see inside.
So when they condemn a building, is that because it's structurally unsound?
It can be both. So I think that in our case, we were a little bit concerned about structure. Obviously, you can see the deteriorating wood,
Right.
as well as any mold, especially after Ian, with the level of water that did penetrate
Right.
the building. So those would be the two concerns that we would have for anyone being.
So we had this conversation a little bit, but the liability for private compared to city is different too.
Oh, yeah.
And so with the city being liable for all these things and having visitors in and out, we really have to kind of protect the safety of the citizens at this point, right, from the buildings. So I walked down the center of that one, but this one, it definitely needs some love before you walk down the center of it. We have the cyclorama over here that if you pulled up an overhead of the cyclorama, you can actually see the roof is gone in places. There definitely needs some love there. If there was a building that people were focused on saving, there is a reason why this is the one, right?
Right. It's unusual. There's only 3 cycloramas in the country, but I have to add the other 2, I believe, are working cycloramas.
They are.
I know one is
Yeah.
at Lookout Mountain. It shows the Civil War. I don't know where the other one is, but cycloramas should be functional. And this wasn't even functional when I came here in '87 with my mom, and they took us through here. It wasn't even functioning there as a cyclorama. It was just walk around and look at the paintings on the wall, and somebody talked about who those people were and all that. And that was the extent of the cyclorama. But the fact that it's a round building is interesting.
So, this would be a great focal point if it were to be able to be saved, but it's also in the flood zone too, right?
Yeah.
So the technology today is different than it was 40
Right.
years ago, and moving buildings is a lot
But
better.
if you wanted to ask me
So-
if I had to choose, if I had to do a Sophie's choice, okay, and choose,
Yeah.
I would choose that.
Okay.
I even had asked our city manager, couldn't that be refurbished to be used as the admissions? People would walk through there and at least be able to see what's in there and experience the fact that it's round. But again, he pointed out it's in a flood zone. We're still going to be, you're always going back to that.
For those citizens that are out there right now that say it should be no matter what, everything should be restored. What, as Commissioner Alice White, you have one vote, so you still have to build a coalition
Right.
of anything to make your voice be heard in totality. But what is your perspective on this? I mean, if you had unlimited funding, would you then go at it? If you had unlimited funding?
Unlimited?
Unlimited
Yes.
funding.
So what I ask people to take off the table is their wish list, what they want, what you want and what you can have are two different things. So if you want this restored, what are you willing to pay to have that done? And we just had this
We did.
conversation about,
If
okay,
my wife was listening right now, you know that Josh was right. So you can pay for anything,
yes.
but you have to pay for it.
That's right. So do you want to have an increase on your millage rate? I mean, that's what we pay for the Legacy Trail, for example. We pay extra money for that. We pay extra money for the environmentally sensitive land program. That's tacked on to our millage rate, a separate thing on the county. But we pay into that. So would people want that? Say, this is what you're going to pay to restore Warm Mineral Springs.
So if we had unlimited sources, that's one way of looking at it. And the reality of that is we don't have
That's right.
unlimited sources. So we have to find different sources. We just went through the P3 and while the P3 was a great opportunity for us as a city to look at a different opportunity.
Right.
We don't have, and in a really bold way of saying it, they're not beating our doors down here
No.
to bring their money forward.
Right.
Is there a reason for that?
I would say because they're looking at the work involved. It's just like when you're going to go to restore a house or rehab a house, you're looking to see what it's going to cost you and are you going to make your money back after you put that what's in it to get it to that level. And of course, people want to turn a profit when they're rehabbing a house. But I think that 3Ps are looking at the revenue that they could produce from that site. Is it going to be enough to cover all the expenses to maintain it, as we just got finished saying, how it should be maintained? And that costs money to do that. And I think that's why 3Ps have not been interested. Somebody else coming forward.
Well, and so right now, even the workings of Warm Mineral Springs as it is today, that still falls under the budget of Parks and Rec, correct?
Yep.
So no matter what, they're absorbing cost of extra buildings now and staff and sewer and things that we need to be
Right.
really be paying attention
And
to.
clean up, and we were talking about that cyclorama. I think it was, we had approved last year to fix that roof just to shore it up because it had gotten a hole in it. And I think it was $38,000 or $58,000.
And that's just for the plywood they put up there.
Right.
Can we see inside the cyclorama or you landlord in? Yep. Okay. So it's still an unsafe building.
Yeah. So we're using taxpayer money to do that, which is not providing any benefit to people at all, but it's still costing the taxpayers money
Yeah.
for that.
So no matter, the empty buildings that are sitting here, we still have to kind of maintain
Yes.
and keep safe
Mhm.
and we have to keep people out.
Right.
We also have temporary fencing all the way up around this facility,
Yes.
which also, it's good and it's bad all at the same time because it's not what you would call a hardened
Yes.
gate entrance,
Right.
because there are temporary fencing.
Yes. And there have been people, and maybe Trish can answer this. There have been people who have enjoyed temporary housing in the other 62 acres out there,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
That have made themselves at home in there. And
So the reason I bring this up, and I'll probably throw it right back to you, but it's the water safety side of it too, because we have the Great Aquatic Center, and anybody who has a home also needs to understand that they're either fenced or they have their screening around it. So that's what protects it. But the temporary fence is a little different. You kind of want to hit that?
Yeah, we have a temporary fence since Ian because we lost a lot of the vegetation that kept people from trekking through. But we do need to look at long-term, a permanent fencing structure,
Mhm.
for that purpose
Just another-
specifically.
And was that in the 2019 plan? I don't know.
It was not.
Okay, so that's another expense.
And just to clarify a little bit about the taxpayer thing, War Meadow Springs is its own fund. So when we spent that money on that, it did come out of the War Meadow Springs fund
Okay,
to pay
good.
back. So just to
So,
clarify.
so it is one of the, and I'm glad you brought that up because there's two things that people need to understand. Money maker and revenue stream for capital project. This is a capital project, right? And it does have a revenue stream. It's not necessarily a money maker though. But the city's not designed for that. It's in the Parks and Rec system. So we kind of put that into a different pool of land and we're not paying for it. We already paid for it. So, as a business, people kind of get confused out there and they
Yeah.
say it makes money, but technically it's a revenue generator.
So I think the biggest difference you have to look at is as a capital investment, when we make that as a city, we make an investment into capital. This is an asset of the city. So with it having its own fund, it is able to pay for its expenses out of its own fund. And I think that's the difference that people think of when they think of, a business, or other brick and mortar where you have a mortgage and you're paying a rent or you're paying those other pieces. That is, and whoever decided at that time to do it as its own fund, did do that to show that the return on that investment was
Right.
being able to be reinvested
Yes.
into this capital.
Well, and when we're talking about the lending side for the city, because this actually has a revenue source,
Right.
this actually has a way of paying back that loan that we would
Right.
possibly get to fix it. So in
If the
order,
voters were
if
to approve that.
yes, if the voters were
Right,
to approve it,
right.
and that would be a specific, that would be a
Yes.
specific target.
And again, I just want to go back to that revenue producing. Is that how you said
Yeah.
revenue producing? That I'm looking at this, and this is like you said, how can you say something was making money when things like this were not addressed? I don't even know what that is. There's hinges there.
Yeah.
Why?
It's an access door.
Oh, okay.
It's an
okay.
access door.
But just look at that. And
It's a
this,
flat, it's more of it's not a flat roof, but it's a roof that doesn't have a lot of access points like the one over here on the,
be a wooden arbor.
yeah, and this used to have a cover on it. And I'll show you up inside this. Those of you who are listening,
Oh,
so you can see up in the, we're trying to give you just a full,
because actually,
full
if
view.
if we were fixing things and putting money back in to address the issues that this has had, such as maybe having central air and not window air conditioning units, it never would have been making money. And I use the air quotes, I'm sorry, but that's the only reason why there wasn't any money being used to do maintenance and to invest in it on a regular basis.
So I know that Commissioner Jill Luke was part of the commission that voted on a lot of this stuff. So she's got, like, I talked to her for hours yesterday, and she actually was the one who yesterday kind of turned my opinion from tear 'em down. And so I struggle. I know it sounds like I've made up my mind, and at the same time that I make up my mind, the reality of the conversation is they are historic
Yes,
facts.
right.
They are.
But there's that financial component that has to
Correct.
be addressed
Correct.
and addressed realistically. I taught algebra. I'm a very, very, logical person. If you're saying again, like you said before, there's just boatloads of bags of money out there. There isn't. There isn't. So, like you said, need to hear what people are willing to pay, even if it means an increase. Are they willing to pay an increase in their millage rate?
And we don't even have a number like
Right.
for a millage rate increase.
Yes.
That we could
What that would look like.
look at us. I think we need to ask staff to give us the
Right.
number.
And even that, again, if we already know we're at least $9 million short, would that generate $9 million in the time that, we need to get this done?
Yeah.
Or is it still going to languish the way it is until we finally taken enough to do that?
So on a time frame, we're really struggling with this because we're for several years now past Ian.
Yep.
And they've been exposed to Ian. They were exposed to God knows what before that.
Mhm.
And sadly, they have actually stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Because they're still standing.
They're still there.
And there's a lot of buildings that are not left. We all saw Fort Myers Beach, and
Mhm.
we've seen some tours of recent.
Right.
Whether this stays or not, Warm Mill Springs has to change. It has to change, whether it's change with updates and restoration, or change for the good with maybe new buildings and keeping one or several. I don't know how that
Right.
mix is going to go.
Mhm.
But one of the things that has to be looked at is the usage of the park. And that has to also be put into that plan, the usage of the park and how it's going to maybe change the lives of people in Northport, because the majority of the people that swim here are in
Unincorporated.
unincorporated
Yeah.
Sarasota
You're
County.
right.
So they're really
You're absolutely
non-residents
right.
of Northport.
Right.
But it's hard, and even for you, that's a hard call for a couple of reasons, because we also want the travel, we also want the tourism dollars, we also
Right.
want to see those things. But in its current state, whew, I don't even know how you begin to market anything
Right.
like this.
Right.
So
So you have to accept that we're just going to be that flat line, because I don't see it generating enough income to warrant, getting that $9 million. And like you said, you have to have different revenue streams coming in. You just can't, if you target one thing and that one thing dies or they stagnate, you have nothing else. And that's what that 3P plan to me presented, the opportunity of having so much more here that would bring in people who normally would never, ever come here at all. But they would still come here and enjoy this as a park, because that's what we call it, um, for themselves, and maybe have nothing to do with the lake. But we have to offer something other than the lake.
see, and I look at you, even when you ran and prior to, you were my my tree lady that thought about the environment, thought about all these things first. How tough a decision is this for you? Because this has to be so far out of your scope of acceptance.
Maybe as far as the buildings go.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I love historical things.
Right.
I've taken, as a teacher, I had summers and I did historical road trips every year. I loved going to historical buildings and places, but all those towns, what they had in common is they had people that rallied and they got the money themselves, or they started a nonprofit and they got a building restored and that generated another building. And I don't see that happening here. And again, we come back to, we have to get all the wishes off that list and get back to reality. Is, like you said, how would people like to see this funded?
so we're going to take a walk.
Yeah.
Let's go to the water,
Okay.
because there's some, I got some really great pictures here this morning, and there were tons of people, and the parking lot was like double full just a little bit ago when I pulled in on the motorcycle, and I was impressed because
Let's
we,
not forget, we had over 16,000 visitors in the month of April this year.
that is, what's our record? Do you know?
For a month, I don't know off the top of my head, but that is a pretty significant number, and that's back to like a pre-Ian number that we're coming to.
And
So-
is that like the first time you've seen that, or has it been a while to build up to it?
It's been a while to build up to it, but we've had peaks and valleys, throughout the time. But we're coming back into where we were before the storm, which is our
give you
We are now. We're back. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
That's okay.
We got a little hot on the phone. I was standing in the sun too long.
Oh. And I always point out to people the exotics. That's always bothered me. That, again, something that should be true Florida wouldn't have exotics, especially exotics that are problematic.
John and I talked a little bit this morning about the bamboo stand that's in there
Yeah.
because some people love it, and if you look in
People about those, that they're terrible, that they have a toxicity in their needles that prevent anything from growing. And they said, well, they're the only thing that's providing shade. Yes, you're right. That's why we have to plant something else.
They
we
are.
good?
So that's all right. You stay right behind us. And if
All
that
right.
comes back online, we're going to be fine.
Oh, okay. So we're from your tablet?
Yes, we're from the tablet. So we're still gonna go out and we're still gonna see everything. And we're taking a walk out, down and through. So, you guys have to stick with me on this. I apologize. Technology and the heat of the day. I should have stayed in the shade more. But I'm glad you're sticking with me and I appreciate it. But we're gonna turn this camera around and let you see Warm Mill Springs. How about the better part of Warm Mill Springs? Because we've kind of showed you the rough part.
Right.
And so we're going to turn this around.
Yes.
And just for a few minutes, I'm going to continue to kind of show you some rough parts because that is the reality of it all. And those are still, window AC units.
Yeah.
So anybody who's got a 1960s house in Florida understands the difficulty of running any of the utilities in your attic that you don't have. But you can see people are here swimming. They're enjoying the whole atmosphere of Warm Mill Springs. And I did talk to staff, and I know you found out that the water here gets tested and circulated. It circulates quite a bit.
It circulates, I'm told, that every 24 hours. Is that correct? Every 24 hours the water changes because it flows in and it flows out.
Yeah. So the health of the springs is really indicative of the flow. It's monitored here by services to make sure that flow remains consistent. It is about 9,000 gallons a day that come up through the springs and out through the outflow. With that, we also do bacterial testing to indicate if our bacteria levels get high, the same as would be tested at the beaches to just make sure it's a safe water.
Sure.
Okay.
And you have one lifeguard at a time?
Nope, there's 2 lifeguards up
Oh,
here
I
and
see.
one that goes on a rotation through.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic. So checking out the water, there's been people in all day long. You've got all kinds of things that are happening. I want to check my phone to make sure we're good there.
I'm looking for some shade.
A little bit of shade. So with everything, just stay here in the shade. With everything that's going on, we've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
If your wish list could be filled, what would you do as the commissioner? You talked about wish lists,
Right.
and there's such a thing as reality and a wish list.
Right.
So you talked about that too.
Well, my wish list is that we would restore these buildings
Right.
and bring them back to their splendor and have
So-
them be the way they should be. The
Do you-
reality is that costs money. And we have pursued, and on the May 28th, all that's going to be presented, but we have pursued what else supposedly is out there. And even though we've heard from other people, including a county commissioner, that let's work together, nobody has come forward to say, here's what we're going to provide for you. Here's the millions of dollars to get this done.
So let's. I kind of want to hit all the commission for a second. I know
Sure.
that we've got a sunshine law that you guys really can't discuss all these things.
Well, I'm just talking to you.
Yeah, you're having this conversation with me, and
I
here's
can say whatever I want.
here's the beauty. You just gave your overview. Do you feel like there's any commissioner out there that hasn't taken a good solid look at this and
No, I
just
think
as looking at it going, I don't care, let's just tear it down.
no, I think everyone has really done his or her homework, has really been passionate about finding out information because we get information, and of course, when we reply to that information that comes to us from an outside source, we have to just reply singly. So we don't know if anybody else has seen it even or what they've said. But I know that they're at least receiving that information because it goes to all of us at one time, and that's a lot of great information out there. But again, it comes down to a lot of good ideas, but nobody's come forward with that credit card.
See, and we always like want to look backwards and attack backwards and then
Yeah.
attack current.
Right.
And people who did things back, the Joluke days and before, and I say before because this has been 14 years on our books, right? Or is it longer
no,
than
it's
that?
in 10 years.
10 years.
We
10
acquired
years.
it in 2014.
So we've got 10
Yeah.
years on our books.
Right.
And the whole thing is with 10 years on our books, the whole position has changed, so to speak, with Ian.
Yes,
And that's kind of amped a lot of things.
because that's a reality. That's going to happen again.
It is.
We can't say, oh, that was just the once. Like with Charlie, I think people got a little complacent. Like that was Charlie. And we weren't really even hit with Charlie other than power not being out for 2 weeks.
Right.
2 weeks without power in August. Yeah, that was fun. But now we know that something like Ian is going to come again.
Well, and it isn't going to take. We're compromised. They're compromised at this point. So hopefully we won't get hit by a storm of any magnitude. But it's not.
I don't believe in just holding my.
Yeah, no,
wishing.
right.
No, let's hope we don't.
Yeah.
You have to figure the worst case scenario.
But it isn't even going to. It's not. I agree. But the reality is this is not going to take an Ian to cause more damage here.
Right.
Because they're compromised already.
Yes, the sun, just whatever rain we get is continuing to disintegrate and put it into.
So the struggle is real.
Yeah.
Are we going to form some sort of a committee that gets together and talks about it, or do we have one already?
I think we've talked.
We've talked enough.
Yeah.
All right. So is that a full blown opinion of the commission at this point that we've talked enough?
No, I just don't see that. That hasn't been brought up to have yet another committee. I know what's been brought up is having a sit down with James Buchanan and Senator Gruters possibly.
Is there funding within them, or have they not come forward and said anything?
They haven't come forward, and that again leads me to believe there isn't any money because I would think we'd be going. Trish, how long has this been? When was Ian again? 2 years ago?
Yeah, 20 months.
Yeah.
Okay, 20 months. That knowing what our struggles are and have been, that somebody say, hey, we heard about Warm Mill Springs. What can we do to help you? Nobody has done that. Nobody has done that. And that's what people are waiting or people think is going to happen. But I'm sorry, if that was going to happen, they would have done that a long time ago. First of all, it's a big PR moment there. Like I stepped in and helped to save Warm Mill Springs, but nobody has done that.
So the key to this whole thing, though, is we still have a beautiful park here, and people can come and enjoy the water. They need to come out and support the park and go check out the park systems. If they're on the restoration side, find your group. If you're on the oh my God, don't spend my tax dollars, find that group. I'm quite sure that you're shaking your head a lot, and that people are going to have their opinions, but tough decisions are probably going to have to be made at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, we hear a lot from people to save the buildings. Do we hear a lot from citizens that say, don't put my tax dollars there? Or are they quiet?
No, because generally it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Typically when people come out to protest, and as one who's rallied for the tree canopy, I know that very well. You can always get people out with signs that say stop the clear cutting, but no one's going to come out saying, hey, great job. And
clear cut it all.
No, great job in saving the stand of trees here.
Right.
Nobody
No,
does
that's
that.
True, too. That's true.
That's just human nature. Okay. But when I talk to people on the different circles that I travel in, they are pretty much like, what are you going to do about that? Or you need to do something. Or Warm Mill Springs. But a lot of those people don't live here either, because you brought up the whole component of that. who's going to pay for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is something that has to be talked about.
Right.
And it truly is almost a thorn in our side at some points, because there's a huge following here, huge,
Mm-hmm.
of people who love the atmosphere, love the water,
Right.
and it's part of their culture.
Yes.
Not,
Yes.
and I'm just not talking United States. I'm
Right.
talking culture embedded deep in their families.
Yes.
And you have to understand that their commitment, while valid, also has some
Yes.
ramifications to the rest of us
Right.
who do pay the taxes
Right.
and are going to carry on the legacy, whether it be through new features or
Right.
rehabbing and restoring.
Yes. And those people that are passionate, like the people are here, those are the people I hear from that are concerned that whatever we do, we're going to compromise this. This whole area is in a conservation zone, so nothing can take place here. Am I correct with that? Like, as far as
I think it
There's
is.
a 325
Yeah.
foot archaeological barrier around
Right.
the spring.
right?
All right.
Yes.
So something you pointed out, and there, I'm sure you have these maps out there too, and we're going to hit it just in conversation because of where we're at right now.
Right.
But the area around the springs had a kind of a protection even from the P3, correct?
Yes. And
And
before that,
and
that
before
was
that,
put in place, I think, when the county and the city, that nothing was going to happen within this protected area. And that includes those buildings. So should we go the route of restoring those buildings, those are in this protected zone, but you're still going to see heavy duty equipment coming in here, and whatever they need to do to shore up those buildings is going to happen in the so-called protected zone. And people are good with that, which is good. But for them to understand, when they were talking about the 3P, they didn't want to see a hotel here. It was never going to go here. It was
Right.
going to go out there somewhere.
and do we know the effects of bringing equipment in to
May 28th,
no,
Trish, is that called the geotechnical survey?
so they're going to talk about what happens when you bring the big equipment in to
Right.
do the restoration
Yes.
or build,
Right.
and
I think
what
they
happens
can-
to the
they
quality.
know what's under there, what it can tolerate before breakage, because that's what people are concerned about. Because they build on limestone all the time.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
And we do that in Ohio, so I know
Yeah,
that very
we do
well.
that here.
Yes. Other than beachfronts, we do a
Yeah.
lot of things here.
I'm thinking of those skyscrapers in the city of Sarasota. I mean, that's
Yep.
not bedrock,
Right.
that's for sure. Okay. So,
But this is close when you're talking about a spring. There's no spring downtown,
right.
so to speak. But
Yeah.
we're
Yes.
you're
They're-
still
they're
looking at every single
yes, their
aspect
concerns
of
are realistic.
Yeah.
They're
well, but you have to
legitimate, yeah.
analyze the full scope.
Yeah.
So you guys just had a meeting, and I want to address this really quick. But you just had a meeting, and I've heard, oh, they just want to push things through. Why aren't they ready? And that meeting that I watched was recent.
Oh, on the 14th.
Yeah, and you guys really want to be prepared for the meeting with the county versus unprepared for the
Right.
county. Was that the true gist of it all?
Yes, because I saw another sit down before we have all those facts coming through, that those would be questions we would be asked. Like, what did the geotechnical survey show you? We don't have it yet. I wanted that meeting to be after everything is done. Every little lever has been pulled. That this is the max. I think that's the last piece of information coming, because that's also when the Sarasota Alliance is coming to realistically tell us what you can do with preservation funds, what's available out there. This is the route you'd have to take. Then we have all the cards on the table, so to speak.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we 3:59. So I'm going to sign off the air with the radio station. Hold on, real tight. I'll be right back. I'm struggling with my voice right now, but
Because you talk too much.
I do. I talk way too much. And my tablet is getting warm again. Holy cow!
Wow.
But the beauty is we're standing in one of the most beautiful places that we have in Northport, and the end game here for Warm Mineral Springs is to make it even better and more pristine.
Yes, I see this as the jewel. We need to have the setting
Yeah.
be, respect that jewel.
Yep.
In the right way.
Well, and I appreciate everybody listening today. We're going to try to do this. I'm going to get ice packs for my phone and my tablet the next time, or move to Alaska, one of the two, because it's not as hot up there. But you know, to be out here on site and at least attempt this and let people see, really not just the buildings in their current condition, but also what's here and what this is about. This is a huge asset for Northport. If you haven't been out to look at it before November, come out here. Even if you had to pay the admission, it's how much is it for Northport citizen? $15. Come out, enjoy it. Come out and look at it. Do a drive-by and look into the gates and look at the buildings. And then when you go to vote on the referendum, understand what you're voting for. Because if there's anything that I would encourage is, one, to vote, and two, understand what you're voting for. Because if you want this to be done, there's going to be a solution for that. And it does come with costs, and you know, but it also has the money generating side of it, which is what we're looking at right now. So there are solutions, but the citizens of Northport are going to speak up in November, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right.
And actually put their money where their mouth is. They want to see this happen. Yeah.
All right. Anything else to add?
No, I think you covered it.
Trish, did I miss anything? Awesome. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio saying thanks for listening in. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but my tablet is probably 200 degrees right now. Thank you so much. I'm going to look back at the comments, and anything that we can answer, we will definitely get out and get in front of it. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And on the 7th, I have Elena Ray coming on. It's going to be a fantastic show. I've got the 21st. I've got Jerome Fletcher, our city manager, on. That's going to be a wild shootout with lots of information. We're going to dive deep into a lot of the things that are happening in our city, and we need to really share the information, get the information out to the citizens, whether you're for this or not. Educate yourself on everything that's going to be on the ballot. But thank you so much and have a great day.
No, I know. Thank you. You guys are great.